Hello everybody, and I don't need these. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Community Comments, my Q&A series where I react to or answer your questions. It's been a hot minute since I've done one of these videos. Let me check the last community comments to see if anyone left a question there for me to answer, because I think it's been over a year. Okay, my previous community comments video was February 26, 2019, so almost a year since I last did an episode of this series. Whoops. Okay, let's take a look. That's not a question, that's not a question, that's not a question, that's a Transformers lore question, and not what community comments is for, and that's not a question. So we had no questions on the last episode of community comments. So that might explain why it's been almost a year since the last episode of this series. I have this issue where I have two different series where I take comments and their questions and answer them. One of them is Transformers More Lore, which is for Transformers lore questions. If you have questions about the Transformers multiverse, you ask them there, and I, as lore master, will answer them there. And then I have Community Comments, which is my Q&A series, where you ask questions about me, about my opinion, about stuff about my life, stuff like that, so you get to know, you know, your favorite creator, who sits in a red room now with a Snuggie. I have this issue where people will just ask questions regardless of their content in the comments of both series, which is unfortunate. Especially recently, since I've brought back Transformers More Lore, people are asking lore questions. I mean, people are asking lore questions there, but they're also asking non-lore questions, so that doesn't work. So I figured I'll bring back community comments. Not that I really thought it was dead, but you know, there were no questions on the last one. But I'll do a new episode of community comments answering the personal, not Transformers lore questions from the two most recent Transformers More Lore episodes. For future reference, community comments doesn't have to be about Transformers. In fact, I'd encourage it not to be, but the questions asked here kind of asked for my personal opinion and didn't really belong on Transformers More Lore. If you want your question answered in the next episode of Transformers More Lore, of community comments, now I'm confusing myself. If you want your question answered in the next episode of community comments, leave your question down in the comments below. Odds are it will be answered in the next episode, seeing as last episode there were no questions. Mustafa Amin says, "Hey Radix, I'm thinking of picking up All Hail Megatron. Do you think it's worth getting? I think All Hail Megatron is a great story. I do recommend you getting it in the context of the IDW universe, which means I don't recommend you reading it before reading the Furman era of the IDW comics. So read the Furman era first, but after that I do recommend All Hail Megatron. A lot of people hated All Hail Megatron when it first came out just because it kind of disregarded continuity when it came out, but later stories fixed the continuity with it. I think it's a very good modern interpretation of sort of the classic Transformers, and I do think I would have hated it if I was keeping up with the IDW universe in 2008 or whatever, but I wasn't. When I first started reading IDW Transformers, International Incident was the arc that was coming out at that time. Now I read the IDW universe in order, so like I didn't start with International Incident. I started with getting all the backlog of stories and reading from then on. But I enjoyed All Hail Megatron. All Hail Megatron remains to be one of my favorite parts of the IDW universe. João Lucas Nascimento Leite, oh boy, that didn't go so well, asked, "You still gonna do another video about the Universe War?" Yes. You know, the last episode ended with part 1, which suggests that there will be a part 2. In fact, I thought I said that there was going to be a 3-part series, so yes. The notes for it have already been finished. I just haven't written a script for it because it's very... This part's specifically annoying because a lot of characters show up in it, and I'm trying to like explain where each character came from in the multiverse. Part 2 has like a whole army of characters pop up, so it's kind of annoying to try to write a script for that, but it will come out eventually. Shockwave 2 asks, "Will you ever make any fan theories or no?" The last fan theory I made didn't go so well, although that was like 3 years ago. I will be releasing that video on my Patreon. I'm planning on updating my Patreon tier so that a lot of videos that aren't out in public right now, but used to be, that I took down, can be found on Patreon. Videos including when I was talking about the Unicron solo series, and then my cat came in and I spent most of the video petting my cat, that I took down because people were saying, "We don't want to see you play with your cat, we want to see you talk about Transformers." I'm like, you don't deserve to see this video, so I took that down. That video will be on Patreon. My video talking about Aubrey Sitterson that I took down because so many people misinterpreted it will be on Patreon, and my video about my fan theory will be on Patreon. Actually, is the ARC fan theory still public? I can't remember. If that's not public, it will be on Patreon. It might still be public. You might be able to still see that. But the Unicron Trilogy fan theory will be on Patreon. I'm not sure what tier it will be. It might be $1 tier. So go ahead and support me on Patreon if you want to see those videos again, because I don't think those videos deserve to be in the full public view. But for patrons, I can understand letting you guys see those. As for any future fan theories, maybe that option's always open. Like, if there's one thing about the Commander Radix channel, is that I like to keep my options open to do whatever I want to do. So if I want to make a fan theory video, I'll make it. I just don't have any inspiration to make a fan theory video right now, especially when lore is a joke in Transformers, and the fan theories I support are the ones that are have hints left in the lore. So yeah, will I? If I want to, yes. Do I want to right now? I can't think of any theories I have right now that I haven't made into videos yet. And those are all the videos from the Transformers More lore stuff. I'm gonna look through my comments and see if I can find any other questions that were left out in the multiverse that is my comment section. Jal Lucas Nasmi, I'm not saying that name again, asks, can you do a video talking about the Humanoids and how a new cartoon can work? Oh, that's an idea. I do want to make a video talking about the Humanoids, at least from a lore perspective. I don't really know how I could talk about how a new cartoon could work, especially when the Humanoids is hard to market. It would have to be a completely new frankly, if they announced today we're making a new Humanoid series, I'd expect something done in the style of the He-Man reboot, or some art style similar to Steven Universe. Because that's all that cartoons seem to be doing nowadays when they're rebooting old franchises. But you know, that might be fun. But I definitely want to talk about Humanoids at some point. I've seen a lot of people guess who my favorite character in Transformers is, because that video is going to be coming out. It's interesting to see people's guesses and their thought process. I will say no one has guessed it right yet at the time of recording. Why is my camera getting all glitchy? Yeah, you see that? The light balance keeps messing up. That's crazy. It's like recording in a dark red room isn't good for recording. I want to point out something here. MVP Tomahawk says, agreed, the Megatron stuff in number 15 was pretty cool, but overall this series has been pretty uneventful. Hopefully we'll get something more interesting TF comics with 84 and the Terminator crossover. A lot of people are hyping, for some reason, people are hyping up the Terminator crossover in Transformers 84. First of all, the Terminator crossover is just another part in a long line of merchandising that IDW has done recently where they cross over Transformers with something. Nobody really talked about Transformers versus Star Trek. Nobody really talked about Transformers and Ghostbusters. But then Transformers Terminator's announced, and for some reason everyone is talking about it. Like everyone. I'm like, why are you talking about that one when you said nothing about the Star Trek and the Ghostbusters crossover? It's weird. I think you can trace this all the way back to the Angry Birds crossover, maybe. All the crossovers miniseries before have been bland and uneventful. I don't expect anything less or more from the Terminator crossover. I expect it to be bland and uneventful. Now for Transformers number 84, everyone's talking about the new 84 miniseries, but when the 84 one-shot came out, nobody talked about it. So again, this feeds into the why are you hyped about this when nobody was talking about it before? And the thing with 84 is that it was like, oh, we're being retro and we're flashing back to the original continuity. Don't you guys love the original continuity? Here, let me put out a story that contradicts the original continuity. Because if there's anything you guys need more in the Marvel Transformers universe is more continuity errors. And then of course we're going to use art that we're going to say, oh, it's retro, even though it's just a modern day artist with crappy 80s coloring applied to it. The reason you guys did that coloring in the 80s wasn't because that was the style, you did it because that was the limitation. And I hate seeing that coloring practice done in the name of nostalgia, even though that was a negative rather than a positive. I do not think of Transformers number 84, Transformers 84 number 0 highly. I think I did not like it, and the fact that they're making a full mini-series of it leads me to have very low expectations. Blue Raccoon 10 comments on my Transformers Lore Beast Wars Uprising video, Alone Together, where he is just part of many other comments that says, wow, I ship Rampage and Transmutate. I hate the idea of shipping Alone Together, Rampage, and Transmutate. Please stop. The relationship between Transmutate and Rampage is more of a mentor-student type relationship, where one has to learn to control their anger and one has to learn to protect themselves. They enter this symbiotic relationship, but it shouldn't be a romantic relationship. It's a bit, problematic as a romantic relationship. Please don't. Razviel Ramos says, do you think the Power Rangers will ever join the Hasbro shared universe? I would like to see Lord Zed and team up with Megatron. No, and I already explained why that wouldn't work in that previous video. I sort of made that as an answer to several comments saying Power Rangers should be in the Hasbro universe, even though that's not what the Hasbro universe is. Ultimate Knight asks on Commander Cabin number 4, what anime is the thumbnail from? I'm sorry, man, I don't know. I just googled looping anime aesthetic GIF on Tumblr and found it. James Edwards asks on my video Transformers Lore Movie Universe Part 2, Foundation. He asks, what comic book is this coming from or based on? Transformers Foundation. People are bringing up on my You Don't Want a Beast Wars movie video that Travis Knight made a good Bumblebee movie. I want to say that, to add to that point, is the reason we are all freaking out about Bumblebee is because it was good. It was a diamond amongst the rough. It was an exception to the rule. And as an exception to the rule, we cannot stand on using Bumblebee as a case example of how making movies out of anything we want is a good idea, because it still isn't. You know, it's the exception to the rule. That's why we praise it so much. On my Rise of Skywalker video, Random Uploads 2017 says, I completely agree. The last year or two, I felt people have been quite pretentious about that and use it often to defense or criticism for a film. Would you ever do a video about films that have more of a theme than a story? That's a good idea. I might do something like that. There's some stuff in storytelling I've wanted to talk about, using film as an example. And one of those, you know, might have to be with, you know, how story is better than the difference between story and theme. But I also want to talk about how I don't care about premise in a story whatsoever. Like, if you want to recommend to me a story, don't tell me the premise of it. You know, that's not how you're gonna get me. I don't care about premise. Premise actually doesn't matter. So I want to make a video on that, but the thing is, the moment I thought about that, Digibro uploaded a video titled I Don't Care About Premise, and I haven't watched that video yet, but I have a feeling that he said the exact same thing I was going to say, so I'm kind of concerned about making that video. On my The Death of the Transformers metafiction, Tersolpix asks, what's a Transformer? I don't know. Alright, I think we've been going on far enough at this point. So that's community comments where I answer your questions. It's my Q&A series that has, it might be one of the oldest running series on my channel, come to think of it. But if you have any questions you have for me that isn't like a Transformers lore question, this is my Q&A series, so feel free to leave questions in the comments below, and they will be answered in the next episode of Community Comments. And I can say this because I haven't been getting questions on Community Comments recently, so if I get one question, I'm going to be like, oh, thank God. But yeah, that's going to wrap that up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Check out my social media links in the description, including my Twitter. It's a new Twitter. Subscribe if you have not yet, and have a great day, ladies and gentlemen. Huge thanks to our patrons, including this month's $10 plus patron, Josh Adkins. Check out the description for more patrons and more info about how you can receive a shout out here.
So I didn't have to feel this pain that's never ending. While you're up in heaven, make sure you save me room. The good will die young, so I hope I die soon.